Hello, I'm Desmond. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You've spent hours studying vocabulary, you've memorized thousands of words, and your test scores are actually quite good. You feel confident reading a textbook or an article at your own pace. But when you try to listen to a native speaker on a podcast or watch a movie without subtitles, you freeze. You hear the words, you know you've studied them, but by the time you've translated them in your head to understand the meaning, the conversation has already moved on. You are left behind, catching only fragments of the sentence. If that sounds like you, please don't worry. It's not your fault, and it certainly isn't a lack of ability. This is simply how the human brain processes language when it has been trained in a very specific way. Today, I want to talk about why knowing a word isn't the same as actually using a word, and how a method called extensive reading and listening can help you bridge that gap. First, let me be clear. Vocabulary books are excellent tools. If you are a beginner, building that foundational database of words is absolutely essential. You cannot read a book if you don't know the alphabet. But there is a limit to this method. A vocabulary book gives you the knowledge of a word's basic meaning. You learn that word A equals a specific translation in your native language. However, in a real, fast-paced conversation, you need to process that word instantly without conscious thought. Let me give you an example. Imagine you are listening to a podcast. The speaker uses a word you studied last week. Your brain pauses and says, "Wait, I know this word. What was the translation again?" For 2 or 3 seconds, your focus is entirely inward. You finally remember the meaning and you feel a sense of accomplishment. But while you were doing that, the speaker continued talking. You just missed the next 3 sentences. This is the translation trap. It is a severe bottleneck in your brain's processing power. According to Paul Nation, a leading researcher in second language acquisition, for a word to become fully ingrained in your memory so you can use it effortlessly, you need to encounter it in different contexts about 10 to 12 times. Memorizing a word from a list is just encountering it once. In reality, words change their nuance depending on the context, the tone of voice, and the words surrounding them. Until you feed your brain a massive amount of contextual data, your brain will always rely on its native language as a crutch. You will always be translating in your head, which inevitably slows down your comprehension to the point where real-time listening becomes impossible. The most scientifically backed solution to this problem is extensive reading and listening. Think of how you learned your native language. You didn't sit down with a dictionary as a toddler. You listened to your parents, you absorbed stories, and you learned the language in chunks and patterns. Extensive reading and listening attempts to recreate that natural absorption process, but in a highly accelerated way. This method doesn't mean taking a short text and analyzing every single grammar point for an hour. It means reading and listening to a massive amount of content and moving forward even if you don't understand every single detail. You guess the general meaning as you go. Research shows that to successfully guess an unknown word from context, you need to already know about 95% of the surrounding words. This is exactly where your vocabulary book pays off. You use the basic vocabulary you learned from your textbooks to naturally absorb the new, unknown words. By repeatedly encountering words in different situations and sentences, your brain begins to recognize patterns. It creates a direct neural pathway for English. Eventually, the translation process drops away and you start understanding English as English. So the next logical question is, what material should you use for extensive reading and listening? There are many options out there, including books specifically simplified for language learners. But on this channel, I provide 1-hour listening videos featuring the original texts of Sherlock Holmes, complete with on-screen transcripts. I chose Sherlock Holmes for a very specific reason. A mystery is the perfect engine for extensive reading. The desire to know who committed the crime or how a clever trick was solved keeps your brain engaged. You want to know what happens next, which pushes you to keep reading and listening even when the vocabulary gets tough. Furthermore, detective stories naturally repeat highly logical academic words. For example, in a Holmes story, you won't just see the word look. You will see words like observe, examine, inspect, and scrutinize. By the end of a 1-hour video, you might hear the word deduction or evidence 20 times. You won't need to memorize them. Your brain will simply absorb them as functional tools. These are exactly the sort of words you need for proficiency exams like IELTS or TOEFL, or to function in a professional, English-speaking environment. However, I must be completely honest with you. The original text of Sherlock Holmes contains advanced vocabulary and late 19th century phrasing. It makes it a fantastic, challenging step up for intermediate learners who are feeling stuck. But if you are simply looking for casual, everyday slang, or if you are still struggling with basic grammar, this material might feel a bit overwhelming right now. If you feel ready to take this on, here is how I recommend using the videos on this channel. Don't worry about understanding 100% of the text. Just click play, follow the words on the screen, and listen to the rhythm, the intonation, and the flow of the native pronunciation. Let the story carry you. If your brain gets tired after 10 or 15 minutes, simply stop. You can always come back later. The goal is exposure and endurance, building your capacity to process English over longer periods. If you have built your basic vocabulary and want to test this method for yourself, click the link on the screen to start one of the listening sessions. Challenge yourself, see how your brain adapts to the language without translating, and take that next step toward fluency. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.